Well, the 1960s saw explosive growth at Century Fence. In 1961, Tony Bryant, having spent the last 4 years working for the First National Bank of Chicago, was able to apply his banking acumen to finally obtain for the company the increased amount of working capital it so desperately required to meet the ever-growing number of opportunities that presented themselves to the company, from fencing for highways to even missile silos. And in 1964, Anthony W. Bryant was duly installed as the president of Century Fence. From 1964 to 1967, Century Fence's new president was busily engaged in hiring people and installing systems to accommodate the volumes of contract opportunities being offered by the Interstate Highway Program. In late 1967, the company acquired 6 acres of land in the town of Pewaukee, erecting a new office facility and shop near Silvernail Road. In that 3-year period, sales jumped from $2.2 million to $3.7 million annually, a 68% increase, and profits soared over 600%. In 1968, annual sales would exceed $5 million. At the annual meeting of the company on April 29, 1969, a resolution was passed accepting the resignation of Henry Bryant, now 88 years old, as chairman of Century Fence. After 56 years, his board of directors wished him a long and happy retirement. And why not? Century Fence was bursting at the seams, and business was crazy.
Crazy, I'm crazy for feeling so lonely. I'm crazy, crazy for feeling so blue. I knew you'd love me as long as you wanted, and then someday you'd leave me for somebody new. Worry, why do I let myself worry? What in the world did I do? I'm crazy for thinking that my love could hold you. I'm crazy for trying and crazy for crying, and I'm crazy for loving you. Crazy for thinking that my love could hold you. I'm crazy for trying and crazy for crying, and I'm crazy for loving you.
A few months later, a seminal event would put into motion a phenomenal era of new prosperity for Century Fence. The company's vice president of construction had learned the startling news that the Wisconsin Department of Transportation was contemplating getting out of the road marking business with its own in-house forces. Century Fence quickly went into high gear, drawing up plans for a paint project on multiple Wisconsin highways. Century Fence submitted a bid for $70,000 to the Wisconsin Highway Department, and to its surprise, it was the only bidder. Over the next few months, Century Fence marked over 2,000 miles of state highways in Wisconsin, and the State Department of Transportation was well satisfied with the quality of their work. Almost overnight, the road striping business would take off, with Century Fence employees traveling around the country in the early 70s, doing striping jobs and demonstrating how thermoplastic road marking was a vast improvement over regular paint. From the Texas Sun Belt to the chilly frost belt states of the Northern Tier. But during the 1970s, the national gasoline shortage compelled the federal government into pressing families and companies nationwide to turn down their thermostats in order to save fuel. Century Fence management had always dressed in coat and tie for men and dresses for women. But now, the ladies were unsurprisingly complaining about feeling chilly during the day. Immediately, President Bryant posted a notice stating that office personnel could now wear warmer clothing, including pants for women. The very next day, all of the company's female employees took their president up on his suggestion, and the pantsuit era at Century Fence was born. President Bryant was also focused on adding top-shelf executive talent to his growing company. In 1971, William Hoy was successfully lured from Cyclone Fence to become the executive vice president of Century Fence. This turned out to be one of Tony Bryant's most rewarding business decisions, beginning 25 years of successful experience. From Bill Hoy to Don Lucas and many others, President Bryant always believed that finding committed, street-smart individuals was the best way to keep Century Fence staying alive as its opportunities grew and evolved. But like many great American companies, Century Fence went through a very rough patch in the deep recession of the early 1980s. Business stagnated, and the company unfortunately had to cut back employment for many of its salaried and hourly team. President Bryant seized on this difficult time, however, as an opportunity, recognizing that the company was seriously lagging in the development of its computer systems, hampering its cost controls and its inventory tracking skills. He engaged the services of a team of experts in the field, accomplishing an in-depth analysis of the company's needs in the areas of technology and automation. Soon, the Century Fence staff was working assiduously to integrate the newly acquired computer hardware into the daily workings of the business. And in 1985, a young accountant by the name of Larry Lepla was brought on to maximize the company's computer potential. The result was that by 1989, Century Fence's profits had even exceeded their 1979 level. And by the end of the 1980s, the company was once again basking in exuberance.